Welcome back. I just finished watching Dragon Ball GT episode 26 for the first time. And those of you who tuned in last time will remember that I was very happy with episode 25. I declared it to be the best episode of GT so far, and I was genuinely invested in what would happen next and entertained. So, with that in mind, did this episode meet my expectations from last week? Yes and no. Sort of. It did, but it didn't in other ways. It's complicated. So, very fortunately, it did continue on with the fight between Baby and Goten. So I'll just go over a brief summation of what happened in this episode actually before giving my thoughts. So, we got Goten versus Baby. Goten gets taken over by Baby. Baby decides that Vegeta is the most powerful Saiyan and wants to take over his body. Then, meanwhile, Goku, Pan, and Trunks get the next Dragon Ball, and Goku jumps into this giant dinosaur and pops out of its stomach, and it deflates like an air balloon, and I felt kind of sorry for it. And then they're partying because they only have one more Dragon Ball to get, and I'm happy because they only have one more Dragon Ball to get, which means that this plot line is almost wrapped up. But then back on Earth, Goten's acting really rude because he's Baby in Goten's body, and Gohan is like, "Oh, that is not Goten. Someone took over Goten." So they go to the classic Dragon Ball Z wasteland in order to have a battle. And so Gohan and Goten fight, but Gohan doesn't really put up a fight because he doesn't want to hurt Goten's body, or hurt Goten, same thing. And this allows Baby to take over Gohan. And then Vegeta shows up. Not Vegeta. Piccolo. Piccolo shows up and he's like, "Yeah, I know what you're up to. Leave Gohan alone." And Baby's just like, "Nah," and he just murders Piccolo and Goten. And that's where the cliffhanger is. So my biggest complaint with this episode is that just the way that Piccolo and Goten were just murdered. You know what I mean? I really wish that they had given Piccolo an opportunity to put up a fight, maybe save it for the beginning of next episode as a cliffhanger, oh, Piccolo and Baby are gonna fight now, as opposed to just murdering Piccolo, because that would have been I just don't like the fact that Piccolo just shows up and bam, instantly gets disintegrated. That's not that's not satisfying for anyone, you know what I mean? Because I like Piccolo as a character, so I don't want to see, for Piccolo fans, that's not fun to just see Piccolo disintegrated like that without even getting to put up a fight. And then it's not satisfying for the narrative because it's just, it's it would have been better if they saved a short Piccolo fight for the next episode. And also, while we're on this subject, the fights in this episode, they really, none of these fights are as good as the ones in Dragon Ball Z. There's so little choreography in them. There are some huge explosions and stuff, but there's very little fighting, if that makes sense. For example, when Gohan and Goten, or Baby and Goten's body, are fighting, Goten fires some beams and stuff, but there's there's very little physical struggle. There are very few, punches or, back and forth. There's, barely any of that. And it's such a short fight, too, that it's kind of oh, well, that happened, I guess. You know what I mean? It has the spectacle, but it doesn't really have the oomph, you know what I mean? The tension and all that. It's just very, it's like a lot of, it's like not quite the same complaint. It's that the same complaints I had when Goku and Rild were fighting, because like here, like there is more of a conflict because Baby actually wins the fights, and it's like there's a bit of tension there, but there's very like like, you know, no one actually like hits each other in these fights. It's like a few beams get shot and there are a few explosions, but there's so little actual fighting, and there's like so little like each character, like a huge thing about a Dragon Ball Z fight is like, oh, who's gonna get like ahead of who, and like sometimes it's a drag out struggle, sometimes like it's a quick curve, sometimes it's like there are all these ways you could go with a Dragon Ball fight, and like here I feel like there's barely a fight to behold. It's like it's very, and this goes for both the Goten versus Baby fight and the Gohan versus Baby fight. It's very lackluster. And I think a big thing they need to improve with this series is the fighting itself. Because that's the bread and butter. That's the bread and butter. The bread and butter of Dragon Ball right there is fighting. I mean, obviously, I don't just want fighting out of Dragon Ball. I enjoy the story. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the humor. But fighting is important to Dragon Ball. It is what facilitates the conflict, and it's what results in the most satisfying moments in the series. And so if you don't get your fighting down, it's going to be very difficult to get a really great Dragon Ball narrative out of that. So yeah, so that's my major things. But other than that, I like this episode a lot better than most of the Black Star Dragon Ball episodes. You know what I mean? Like, this is so much... Like, I would take this over any of those random, like, sort of whatever random adventure episodes that they went on earlier in GT, just because those episodes were just so painful to get through. So this was definitely a lot better than certain other episodes. I'll say that. I think they're on a good track with this. They're definitely on a good track to doing something really entertaining. What they really need to nail down, though, is how to do the fights. And I don't know if I don't have a specific answer. I don't even know why I'm trying to give specific answers, because it's not like they're going to listen to me. The show ended like back in 1997. But I think hopefully like, because I said earlier at the beginning of this, I hope they find their footing. I hope they improve, etc., etc. And I'm starting to see that, because the stuff with Baby is a lot more interesting than the adventures with Black Star Dragon Balls, and stuff is beginning to improve in the story. And now what I'm hoping for is that I'm hoping that they improve their fight scenes, because the fights feel so minimal compared to like the rest of stuff, and these fights should be like really big. Like, I don't need every single episode. I don't need it to be like Dragon Ball Z, where they're fighting for episode after episode after episode after episode continuously in like a never-ending drag-out fight. I don't need that. But what I do need is for these fights to maybe last a little bit longer, actually. I do think these fights could benefit from a bit more length, and for there to be a lot more tension and a lot more stuff where it's just like, who's going to win? You know what I mean? Like, who's going to get the edge out over who? Like if character A powers up enough, can they beat character B? Oh, they can. But if character B pulls out this technique, can character B win? You know what I mean? Like, and it's this back and forth, and maybe there's a bit of strategy. Maybe there's some surprises with a new form or a new technique being busted out. Like, stuff like this to get the audience, being me, a bit more engaged in the action. Because, like, Dragon Ball, like, has this down pat, and Dragon Ball Z has its own version of this down pat. Because, like, Dragon Ball, obviously, it goes without saying that the original Dragon Ball is on a much, much smaller scale than Z, GT, and Super. But despite this, it has some of the best fights in the series. Goku versus Piccolo Jr., fantastic fight. I read the manga more recently, so if I'm thinking of it in the manga more so than the anime, then I'm sorry, but, like, the manga fight between Goku and Tien at the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai, like, the way Toriyama drew that, you can feel the speed in the panels, like, the way they're moving. It's just so fantastic. It feels fast despite the fact that it's, like, drawings. Like, and in Dragon Ball, like, it was much more about strategy. It was much more about these techniques that the characters were able to pull out. It was more martial arts heavy. And then in Dragon Ball Z, it got more like, there were more explosions and more, like, flying around and, like, beam struggles and all that. But despite this, the fights were still entertaining because they retained a certain, like, element of who's going to win. You know what I mean? Like, they got more drag out, definitely, but they got, like, they still had a lot of, like, you would still be looking back and forth going, oh, who's going to win? Who's going to... Like a wrestling match type quality. I mean, I don't watch wrestling, but I heard that it's sort of similar to, like, a wrestling match where it's, like, you're really rooting for them. And these GT fights are so short, and they're so... I don't want to say uneventful, but they lack those, like, elements that make a good fight, that it's really hard to get invested in them. And it's like they have explosions and, like, big visuals, but there's so little movement, and, like, there's so little, like, action. Like, I mean, there's action, but there's not, like I said, no one actually throws I don't think anyone actually threw a straight up, well, not necessarily. There's no, like, you know, hand-to-hand. There's very little hand-to-hand combat. There are a few beams thrown around, but, like, there isn't much. With that said, however, I want to emphasize again, still, despite those problems, how much of a step up this is over the Black Star Dragon Ball arc. Like, I prefer it infinitely more. So I can only hope it improves. If the story is at least somewhat engaging on this level, then I think this will have been a pretty solid arc. But that's my thoughts for now. Those are my thoughts for now. If you enjoyed this, then check out my other Dragon Ball GT reviews. I'm going through the entire series, watching it through for the first time, episode by episode. And be sure to stay tuned because I will be doing more episodes in future. So thanks for all that. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.